This is the Enjoyer Podcast. I'm your host, James Dixon.
Amber Harris is one of my favorite people in the world and one of my favorite guests on the Enjoyer Podcast. Last time we had her on, she was talking about her own story, her hillbilly elegy. We've had her on other times to talk about politics in Michigan. Now we're talking about her current passion, which is something I know nothing about. So it's one of those episodes where I'm going to be swimming and relying on our guest to get me to shore. Amber, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And the topic we're going to be talking about is Bitcoin.
Yes.
And just, so I'm someone who, I might have messed around a little bit on Robinhood during the pandemic and, bought $30 of it or something, but no real knowledge of what Bitcoin is, why it matters, why someone would want it. Let's just start from the question everyone's going to have when they see the title. Mm-hmm. What the hell is Bitcoin?
So Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer transaction technology. It doesn't need a middleman. It doesn't need a bank. It's in the intrinsic value of Bitcoin and its scarcity is actually a medium of exchange and money. So that it has a monetary value. It's a peer-to-peer transaction system. So that is Bitcoin in kind of a nutshell.
Okay, why would I want Bitcoin? If I'm sitting here thinking, if I have X amount of dollars to allocate, right?
Right.
Why would I want it in Bitcoin as opposed to dollars, as opposed to, something else?
Okay.
Stocks, say.
So Bitcoin is the highest grossing asset in our lifetime. It has gone from a penny for a Bitcoin up to now it averages about $105,000 for one Bitcoin.
Six figures.
Six figures.
Wow.
And that is when adoption rates, and when I say adoption rate, I mean knowledge, education-wise, adoption rate is about 2%. It's a global asset. Why should you be investing in Bitcoin? It's because it's going to be the best asset in history.
Meaning what? It's going to keep going up?
It's going to keep going up.
Why would it?
Because it's scarce. It's scarcer than gold, because when people realize the intrinsic value that I can send you Bitcoin right now. I don't need to go to a bank. I can send you Bitcoin on Memorial Day. I don't have to ask permission by a government. Government won't shut me down. Oh, sorry. If I say something wrong on the internet, Bitcoin can't be like, well, I'm going to shut her bank account down. So when people see that value, you go to a third world country and the women there can't have their own bank accounts, but they can have Bitcoin. When the value and people see what Bitcoin can do and what it has done over the past 15 years it's been in existence, the value will always rise. And there's only 21 million Bitcoin in the world, but it is divisible. So there's 21 quadrillion Satoshis, which is kind of the cents to dollars ratio of Bitcoin. So it's divisible and it can always be scaled.
Okay, what does that mean?
What do you mean?
What does divisible mean? What does it can be scaled mean? Is there 21 million?
Yes.
Or not?
There's 21 million Bitcoin. But just like dollars to cents ratios, there's 21 quadrillion Satoshis. So if you look at a Bitcoin, it's one and then it's 0.00000. Actually, there's lots of zeros because it's scalable, it's divisible. It can go down forever depending on the value of rising.
What you're saying is there can be smaller and smaller fragments of the 21 million that are bought.
Absolutely.
Okay, and so it sounds like what you're saying is since there's a fixed supply, demand, and as people get into it is what's going to make the price rise.
That's exactly. So when we talk about volatility, because everybody's always going to talk about volatility, they're worried about it going up 1 minute, down the next. Well, adoption rates, people are treating it like a stock. It's not a stock. It's an asset. It's a monetary asset. So when people understand Bitcoin and really get educated, adoption rates rising, volatility will taper off, and it will eventually be the medium of exchange we need to hedge against inflation.
It's funny you say that, the medium of exchange. Because if you said, buy it and in a year it'll be worth more than it is now.
Yeah.
I can understand that. But I think to the average person, when they hear of a Bitcoin story, of it being used, you already know what I'm about to say.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
May 22nd, 2010. And I hate that this happened because it's kind of on the Bitcoin ledger.
It's the best.
Forever.
Yeah.
It's actually the word.
There's a day.
There's
Pizza Day.
Pizza Day. And so we have a man who spent 10,000 Bitcoin to buy 2 pizzas. 15 years later, that would be $1 billion. I mean, this is the Indian selling Manhattan for a little bit of wampum. I mean, this is
You're going to have stories like this forever.
Historically bad. What should be the takeaway? Because the takeaway, and again, admittedly, as someone who does not know what Bitcoin is or why anyone would use it,
yes.
My takeaway is, okay, it might be valuable as an asset, but why the hell would I ever actually spend it? What say you?
So if you're holding, and I tell this because it's a Bitcoin dilemma. It's in the community. You have, we call them hodlers, HODL, hold on for dear life. Hodlers versus medium of exchange people.
Yes.
And I say, and don't get me wrong, we are probably a decade or so away from the actual medium of exchange. You do need adoption rates to rise. You do need buy-in from society. You need the governments that are talking about the reserves right now. It needs to take off. It needs to be educated. We need to be, we need to know what Bitcoin is.
Are you expecting company today? I hear these police.
I know, they're going to come. The government's coming to shut us down.
Are they coming for your Bitcoin? Okay, help me understand this. Okay. Let's say the cops came in right now. They kick in that door. I'm not going to do nothing. They got guns. I don't have a gun.
Yeah.
And they say, I want to take your Bitcoin. Could they?
I don't have it. I don't have it with me.
Where is it?
It's in storage. I have my cold storage and my seed words hidden away deep, deep, deep somewhere. And there's also ways to have multi-sig. So there's like, my seed words could be in Australia right now, and I have to call somebody to get them for security purposes. These are way different levels. There's security upon security, though, that somebody can't come in and just say, give me your Bitcoin. No, I have security measures for that. You can't take my Bitcoin.
You know, it's kind of like a bank, right? You might have millions there, but you can't necessarily go look at your millions anytime you want.
Oh, no, you can.
But it's backed and there's faith. You know what I mean? There's faith in the system. How do you know that these coins exist if they're, like, there's not a Bitcoin someone can hand you, right?
I mean, I have...
Or is there at this point?
No, and there won't be. I have a wallet. Well, that's another discussion for hard Bitcoin or whatever. But that, again, defeats the purpose of the energy and the code. If you have a hard asset, no, Bitcoin is code. It just is what it is. So, as far as your question, which was what again? Sorry. There was a lot. It was convoluted. How can't the government come, see my Bitcoin? I can see my Bitcoin. I have my code. I have my special private key without my seed words that I can log in and be like, there's my Bitcoin. Look at it went up this much. And that's what's really cool is because we're in this adoption phase where it is going up. So I can see when I put in a couple of months ago at 82,000, now it's up to 105. I can go, wow, my asset appreciated this much.
That's incredible.
And it's very cool.
That's incredible growth.
But at the same time, you have to know and be expected that it will go down if, say, crypto and Bitcoin are separate. So we can launch into this right now. So if there is something that happens to a crypto, like Ethereum a little while ago got hacked, well, Bitcoin, the price gets affected by that. And it's just education.
Did it go up or down?
It went down. When Ethereum got hacked, the blockchain or some Bitcoin, or the Ethereum transfer,
so it's no different than, something happening and telecom stocks being down.
Well, it's the education behind people thinking it's still a stock. We have to educate society to realize Bitcoin is not a stock. Ethereum's a stock. XRP is a stock. But Bitcoin is a monetary system. And so, again, volatility will taper off with adoption and education.
And isn't that the big difference right now, right?
That's huge.
When we think of the dollar, even with inflation, we still more or less think of it in our head as the same dollar from when we were kids, even though it's not.
Exactly. And I guess you asked me why Bitcoin, because Bitcoin hedges against inflation. It's just point blank simple. I had somebody tell me the other day, they're like, well, aren't you worried about what it does to the dollar? And I go, I think we should be more worried about what the dollar did to the economy. Why aren't we asking that question?
How does it hedge against inflation? Because it keeps going up?
Because of the scarcity. So it will always go up because of the principles of scarcity. And it's really, again, we are so fiat brained and we're so programmed by governments and banks that to think outside of the box and what Bitcoin is, it's a revolution. It's totally rethinking all of your concepts about money. And it's hard to talk about it to a person that's been in Bitcoin. And caveat, I'm fairly new to the space because I came from politics into Bitcoin. And I still know how to talk to people. But Bitcoiners that go down these rabbit holes and talk the technology,
it's the biggest turnoff
it's
ever.
Horrible.
Like when you see, if I see crypto or Bitcoin mentioned in a Twitter profile, I'm likely to think of it as a bot or at best, just someone who's too extreme. They're just down one rabbit hole.
Yes.
Everything's going to be about crypto. I'm probably going to get some scammy looking DM from them sometime soon.
Yes.
So I just feel like there is kind of a social stigma on the community.
Yeah.
Because it is so tied into code and people without social skills have been a lot of the voices out front. Mm-hmm. So I feel like this is a little different.
This is what my goal is. So a little bit about why I'm here, what I'm doing in Michigan.
Why are you here? What are you doing in Michigan?
Thank you, James. I never thought you'd ask.
I so appreciate having you on.
All caveats.
Amber Harris, great time on the Enjoyer podcast. We'll be sure to catch you guys next week.
I love you, James. I mean, people don't know our history. We are really good friends. So what am I doing in Michigan? The Michigan Bitcoin Trade Council, I want to be the educational advocacy arm of Bitcoin. And when you think of that, Bitcoin doesn't have a central lobbying agency because it's so sovereign. It has nobody backing it but people, as opposed to like the Coinbase,
which is a feature of it, not
exactly
a bug.
Why we love it.
Or has it become a bug at this point where it needs?
No. The value of Bitcoin is in its decentralization. Mm-hmm. So right now, my membership-based organization is an advocacy organization built on people. Built on people that invest early maybe in Bitcoin, that believe in the adoption. But we also have to go to the legislator and talk and educate them about the bills that have passed in other states like New Hampshire and Missouri and Texas. So there's that arm to the Michigan Bitcoin Trade Council. There's the community advocacy and going into talking to groups of people, because I do think individuals should invest in Bitcoin. And then there's the third arm, which is talking to companies and teaching them that a treasury reserve in Bitcoin could really help their bottom line. And I think as communities, if we had, for instance, I'll take El Salvador, and we can talk about what a country looks like when they adopted Bitcoin. So Bitcoin was legal tender in El Salvador as of 2021. The president saw the value of it. He made it legal tender. And now El Salvador has cleaned up its streets, has one of the highest tech jails or prisons in the world, where we're sending our illegals there, and it's safe to go and travel's booming. That's because of Bitcoin.
Because of Bitcoin, or did they happen simultaneously?
I think the president saw the ingenuity of Bitcoin and implemented it, but then you have an asset that you invested in 2021 at $40,000 a Bitcoin, and now it's up to $105,000. So that burden...
Did they hodl?
They hodled.
Oh.
But that burden is off of the taxpayer. They don't need their taxpayers to pay for the prison. Their asset appreciated such that they were able to build the prison.
Because they sold.
I don't know if they sold
or did they
they borrowed
it in some way?
You borrow against your Bitcoin.
Wow. Now that's interesting.
There's a whole lending process. The Bitcoin
borrowing against Bitcoin.
There's whole lending institutions out there. They've been in existence since 2016 was one of the first ones that I've met recently. They've been in existence.
But tell me, you go out. You've been on the road in Lansing. You've been Nashville. You've been to Vegas. You go to a group of people who are interested in hearing about Bitcoin, and say what?
So most recently, because I come from the political realm, I have a lot of networking opportunities. So I go, hey, this isn't going away. Bitcoin's not going away. A lot of people shy away from it. You don't necessarily gravitate towards something you feel uncomfortable about that you don't know. And I was the same way. I had to humble myself to get into Bitcoin because it's not going anywhere. So when I go to these groups, especially because of the Trump administration embracing Bitcoin in the Republican groups, it's really easy to kind of have a foothold to be like, hey, this is what I'm doing now. I would love to talk to your group. And it's taken off like wildfire.
Like wildfire?
Yes.
Why?
Because people are hungry for a solution. And why I got into Bitcoin after politics was because after banging my head against the wall for 4 years, really, I mean, I was immersed. My life did a whole 180.
You went deep.
I did.
You went very deep.
And after...
I don't think you like what you found in the depths.
I mean, you saw me through some of my worst times. Because I immersed my heart and soul into something, and I immersed my heart and soul into people.
And anytime your heart and soul is invested into men, without saying that, like if it's, I'm going to help them,
yes,
then you get it, right? Mother Teresa. But if it's, this is going to be mutual benefit or they're going to help, no.
Well, no. But in politics, I mean, you're helping somebody in the hopes that they do the right thing, and people, that's just not how they're wired.
It's too removed.
It really
from
is.
your ability to affect something directly.
Right. Or just to make change.
Because even if you get your guy in, he won't necessarily fight for the thing you want. And even if he's in, he won't necessarily get the thing you want.
Exactly. And then your faith in humanity, it was sad. So I did a very reflective...
Yeah, because you had to decide, what am I going to spend the rest of my life doing?
And Bitcoin really puts energy in perspective.
So you talked about you had to humble yourself. What was that road to Damascus moment? How did the scales fall off your eyes? Like, okay, I'm not into this, but I'm going to humble myself and learn about it.
Yes.
How did that come to happen?
I love that question. I do. So, again, feeling empty. It was God. It was very much a God moment. I had in the back of my mind, my friend was going to different Bitcoin meetups, and I was like, okay, I have nothing better to do with my Tuesday night. I don't have a political event to go to. Let's go to this meetup. And so I go to this Christmas party, and he actually didn't go. I was going by myself, so I took it upon myself to go because I felt so compelled for something new. I was hungry for a change. And so I go to this Christmas party. I met the coolest people. The coolest people that were so giving. They're like, hey, let me set up a wallet on your phone. I'll give you $25 in Bitcoin. And that $25 in Bitcoin has since, turned to $30, $35.
Absolutely.
And so seeing that and seeing that it actually works was my there's something to that. But humbling myself to learn more, just turned on a podcast. I turned on Michael Saylor's 21 Rules. And it's probably his first introduction to Bitcoin. And Michael Saylor is probably one of the biggest advocates. He goes and sets up stuff. He's MicroStrategies. He saw the value of Bitcoin in 2020 and took his whole life and invested.
Oh my God.
And so Michael Saylor...
Talk about a bet that worked.
For him, absolutely. And he's a very interesting guy if anybody wants to delve into him. He was kind of caught up in the Microsoft era, and he was a tech guy in that field. Very interesting. So... he's ahead of them now in this innovation where Microsoft is not getting on the Bitcoin wagon.
I was going to say, did tech people gravitate toward Bitcoin because of the code base of it, the blockchain base of it?
There's a lot of tech people in the space now. But a lot of them are trying to reinvent the wheel with other blockchain innovations and not necessarily all in on Bitcoin as the monetary asset. They're trying to make fetch happen. I say stop trying to make fetch happen. They try to make XRP the next Bitcoin because they feel like they missed the Bitcoin boat.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I humbled myself to listen to Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor calls you out right away. I'm going to tell the first 4 rules. It's my favorite. Rule number 1 is those that understand Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin. Number 2, everybody's against Bitcoin before they're for it. And number 3 is you will criticize Bitcoin if you don't get it. So now when I was listening to him, I was humbled and called out. He called me out as one of those people that are like, oh, you just don't get it. I was called out as not getting something. And when I'm challenged, don't tell me.
That's the worst thing they could say to you. Yeah.
Like, don't tell me that. And by number 4, and this was where it was like, okay, I know, right? Number 4 is you'll never be done learning about Bitcoin. There's always going to be something to learn. And so I was called out, humbled, challenged, but then kind of soothed that I'm not going to know it all, and that's okay, because I just need to know what Bitcoin is to me. And then number 8 is you buy Bitcoin at the price you deserve. And I'm looking at like 107,000 at that point. I'm like, well, I deserve this because back 10 years ago when somebody told me about Bitcoin, I'm like, it's not tangible. It's stupid. Mark of the beast. No, I could have been a millionaire.
It was the mark of the beast?
Well, because, they say
What's
cashless
your understanding
society.
of the mark of the beast that you thought this was that?
Well, the global currency and revelations and stuff. I mean, people are saying it to me left and right that are extremely like...
I thought the jab was supposed to be the mark of the beast. So
oh, I know.
Right.
So if you get the jab and invest in Bitcoin, it's, game over.
So just reading between the lines on what you're saying, it sounds like you have kind of a 3-prong approach. When I talk to lawmakers, so let's just do this.
Yeah.
When I talk to people, I want them to adopt it. When I talk to businesses, I want them to use it, to accept it, as this medium of exchange. When you talk to lawmakers, is it, I want you to do something, or I don't want you to mess this up?
Exactly. I don't want you to mess this up. We are we are at this precipice in our country where we can actually shape what this legislation looks like for personal sovereignty.
Now, does that mean don't get involved at all?
Well, it means no. And because there are some aspects of this, like, for instance, Missouri, they said no capital gains tax. Don't tax my capital gains on Bitcoin. That's huge.
Wow.
So that's stuff that you do have to get governments. And then as far as
they could ease things, but there's nothing you want them to actively do.
No, I want you to make laws that protect cold storage, for instance. I don't want there to be a time where government goes, you have to keep your Bitcoin on an exchange so we can control it. Because governments want that control. So we want to say, no, you have to protect our right to cold storage, our Bitcoin.
Keep Bitcoin decentralized.
You have to. But in their minds, having it in an exchange is still decentralized. No, it's not. Just like when we talk
This
about...
is what they were trying to do with even after the FTX thing.
Yes.
Debbie Stabenow.
100%.
Where the exchange fails, and I think people misread that. When I saw that story, I didn't see Debbie Stabenow responding to the donations per se. I think what it was this Bankman-Fried guy said, I have the most valuable thing in politics.
Yeah.
Importance. You've never really had signature legislation, Debbie Stabenow. So if you were to be in on this thing, and this were to be how Bitcoin and coins were regulated,
oh my gosh,
then that would be a page in the history book.
Right. Yeah. No, you're 100%, and that backfired.
That backfired very badly.
It backfired so badly to where basically the crypto bros took over politics with their donations. So
and he found out how much of that was based on ill-gotten gain, and so that didn't help. And I think all of it fed into the idea that more politician involvement is not good.
It's not. So we just have like a kind of like a Bitcoin Bill of Rights, and that's what I want to see passed, and everything else, please stay away.
Sum that up.
So the Bitcoin Bill of Rights, protective cold storage. So I can get my Bitcoin off an exchange and I can have custody of it. So self-custody, that's huge. The personal sovereignty with taxes. Don't tax me out of existence to own Bitcoin. KYC is a really big important, it's called KYC, Know Your Customer. Again, when somebody demands you submit all of your paperwork to get your Bitcoin or sell it to a customer, or even the medium of exchanges, that takes away the personal sovereignty of Bitcoin. So kind of, don't over KYC our Bitcoin. Those are a couple of the big ones.
Okay.
And mining, it's energy prices, and if we go down that rabbit hole, that's a totally another rabbit hole. But, just let us have, our sovereignty. That's all it comes down to.
Absolutely. I think this this hodl versus medium of exchange thing is so
it's gonna be
fascinating.
huge. Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to lie. This isn't a podcast today. This is an intervention. That's why I brought you here. It's a one-man intervention. Because you did what the Bitcoin bro did with the pizzas 15 years ago.
Oh, jeez.
Except you did it 15 years later.
Yes.
And Amber, when I saw you buy a sandwich
my God.
using Bitcoin,
Yes.
what were you thinking?
So I practice what I preach always. So, okay, we can go back to that guy in the pizza place, but again,
Obviously, you messed up, right?
No, I didn't mess up. You want me to admit that. I'm not going to admit that.
I need you to admit
I'm not going to admit it.
I need you to be contrite about what someone else did.
For our enjoyer viewers out there, he texted me and said, promise me you'll never buy a sub again with Bitcoin. I won't buy the sub again, but I bought my soap.
And I got assent to that promise, and then what happened?
I bought soap
and
with
then
it.
the next week, it might have been the next day, I see you buy, but it's a pizza this time. Oh, it's cookies this time.
Steak and Shake. Steak and Shake's accepting Bitcoins.
What we agreed to, and you assented to this. You assented to this, is that you would not be spending Bitcoin on food, and then you turn right around and spent it. I meant food, the spirit of the law, right?
The spirit of the
Montesquieu
Bitcoin.
would agree with me, I think. What was that, and why do you continue even after having made the pinky promise? And do you feel like that reflects on your honor at all?
That's hilarious. No, I think I have to practice what I preach. I think creating that circular economy is what is going to save the world. What's going to save Michigan is the innovation part of it. I want to see my Bitcoin that I gave to that deli, I want to see that rise in price to where he can give his customer or his whoever sub makers a raise. Because when his profits go up, his staff, the company, everybody rises.
Because these are literally the only 2 times I've heard of someone using. So 15 years from now, are they going to be saying, hey, it's Amber Harris Day, it's sub day for Bitcoin?
No.
This is the lady who bought a sub sandwich and now it's worth $10,000. Like, is that going to happen?
But so obviously I think what happened in the pizza...
So you're not saying no?
No, I'm not saying no. The pizza thing, I'm sure they turned that around and got right into fiat. So I'm assuming what Papa John's did is they turned it around. Mm-hmm. But think about if they...
And so they missed the ride.
They missed the ride too. Yeah. So imagine if they held it. That would have been a life-changing story for somebody. So I'm into Bitcoin for the life-changing story for that young girl that $1 million in Bitcoin that my dad acquired. Like, what life is she going to have now? It's going to be amazing. I mean, the stories that could come out of what Bitcoin did is why I buy my sub with Bitcoin. Somebody else out there is going to benefit from that. And it's going to have... the butterfly effect. I'm truly, my utopian brain is like,
I don't think there's any question that the pizza place benefited from, the $1 billion pizzas they sold, $500 million pizza each. But I think the question is more, isn't the guy who bought it a sucker? How is that transaction viewed within the Bitcoin community? Is it a cautionary tale?
It's a cautionary tale in such that... Yeah, Bitcoin, what Bitcoin was. Nobody in their mind at that time thought like, it's going to be, trust me, some people did. And they were right. Max Kaiser, the pioneers, they're right. Mike Saylor today going to $1 million. But back then, you were buying drugs off the Silk Road with it. Mm-hmm. It was just kind of like a really cool, niche-y thing to do. But I don't view it as a cautionary tale. I view it as a really cool, wow, if they held on to it, which they didn't. They didn't. There's no way. But if they did, somebody's life would have been different.
On the asset piece, so let's, you hear about in El Salvador saying we're going to have this big stock of Bitcoin, right? Mm-hmm. This reserve. You hear Dave Portnoy. I think he lost some of his on FTX, but basically, I got 1 million Bitcoin I'll never sell. Maybe he said 1 million in Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. When you have people saying that my whole plan, of the 21 million, how much of that is HODL and how much of that is medium of exchange?
Well, right now I'd say it's pretty much all HODL. And I don't know when it will shift, but it does need to shift to actually maintain its value.
So if I buy, I'm buying from someone who probably got it at a good price. Why would they sell to me? Why am I able to buy Bitcoin right now? You know what I mean?
So like, on exchanges, you mean?
Yeah.
I honestly don't know the back end of how all of that works, but they do get transaction fees.
No, I guess what I'm trying to ask is like, why is there Bitcoin available to buy at this point? Like, if everyone knows it's going to go up, who would sell me the Bitcoin now?
I mean, people buy and sell as still as a stock. There's Bitcoin out there. There will be always some fraction of Bitcoin to buy.
How much would you? I mean,
because when it starts getting scarcer, that price is huge.
Right. And does this number exist of how much of the 21 million Bitcoins are still buyable? Does that number exist?
It's out there. I don't have it.
Okay.
I mean, I almost think it's, and this is my dilemma and sometimes my conundrum of when will that be? But at that point, I'm pretty sure it'll probably just all turn to ETFs. You know what I mean? And where you buy it on a MicroStrategies ETF or a Coinbase ETF when and if it never gets to that medium of exchange and everybody's holding it, I think at that point it's where it's just ETFs and it's a stock. But I think that you have to make the transition from the HODL to the medium of exchange for it to keep its monetary value.
Because there needs to be a flow at some point.
There has to be a flow.
If everyone buys and holds, there's not going to be Bitcoin left to buy.
Well, theoretically at some point. I mean, the last time you can mine Bitcoin is 2140. So there will always be Bitcoin to mine until 2140.
How do they know that?
Because that's in the protocol. It's in the technology.
The protocol?
The protocol of the blockchain. Mm-hmm.
So they could make more if they wanted.
Nope.
Why couldn't they?
Because Satoshi Nakamoto, who created the...
That name sounds made up, by the way.
Are we going to go down there right now? We're going to do this? The guy that created Bitcoin, which is a whole nother topic, we probably should have started with that. Fireside chat about Bitcoin starting. So Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin and walked away. Started in 2009, walked away in 2011. Nobody's heard from the pseudonym since then. But by that time, the nodes and the miners that control the network and the blockchain have become so many. You can run a node, I can run a node, and that's what protects the system. But it also protects from somebody coming in and going, I want to change this code. Well, my node says, no, you can't. My vote says, no, you cannot change this protocol. And there's like 20...
Could Satoshi himself?
No, because it has to go through the nodes. And every node is a vote.
So that is kind of like a stock, a compensation package, for instance. The stockholders might reject it. It just happened with the guy David Zaslav at Warner Brothers. So how does this work,
It's a community.
Though? So like the U.S. dollar goes up and goes down,
It goes down. When was the last time the U.S. dollar went up? Oh, please, tell me.
But even then, it's backed ultimately by men with guns. The U.S. military.
Okay.
What's Bitcoin backed by?
Technology, the principle of scarcity, and a global belief system.
That last one sounds like a weakness, a vulnerability, a global belief system.
No, it's actually probably what's going to fuel the big rise because of conversations like this with normal people that see the value and start giving $25 a week to buy a little Satoshi here and there. The glow and seeing that rise and seeing their energy and seeing that, hey, I worked. So for instance, I think the best, I bought a bar of soap with Bitcoin, and that person, so I bought it for $7.50 of fiat, but Bitcoin related, right? Because there is a correlation. So that bar of soap is now $10. But his energy to make that bar of soap is the same energy, but his value went up. So when people constantly are having their value go up for the work product that they put out, we're all happy. We're all hopeful. We don't need to turn to that drug for that dopamine hit. We're all on the same path because our constant efforts are being rewarded by the price of Bitcoin going up.
So Bitcoin's like your natural high.
Bitcoin's a good dopamine hit.
Well, what about it is? Buying more, seeing the numbers go up?
Seeing the numbers go up, but seeing the value for the energy you've inputted on a product. For I don't make soap or anything. I'm not saying that. But for him, the gentleman I bought it from, I'm happy for him. Because that's really, really cool. You made a bar of soap, and instead of the value of the dollar going down because I have to spend it, his value went up. His profit statement appreciated. And if we did that for every company, like McDonald's, if McDonald's stock rose in terms of, hey, I had Bitcoin in my treasury and Bitcoin went up 50,000 this year, I could lower that McDonald's rate for the people because my stock and I'm happy with my portfolio this year. We have to take greed out of society, and I think Bitcoin really hedges against greed right now.
Do we need to take greed out of society?
Yes.
Why? Isn't greed good?
Competition's good. Greed's bad.
Why?
Why is greed bad?
Yeah.
Because that's what creates, the scandals. That's what creates the high
wealth.
You think the greed creates the wealth?
Absolutely. There's a bunch of people who have enough money to never do anything again who choose to say, let me open a factory. Let me open a hotel. Let me open a restaurant. And a lot of people do better in those things than they would have ever done. So if everybody
that's
kind of
ambition, though. That's
if everybody
not greed.
left well enough alone, right?
That's ambition. That's not greed.
I think going past the point you need to, right?
I think greed is more like...
What did Mike Douglas ask in Wall Street? Like, how many toys do you need? How many beachfront homes do you need?
Well, that's greed. So you're talking about somebody that actually did something with his money to benefit society. Greed would be if I just built up my, mansions and lived everywhere around the world in my personal...
Well, even so, that there's a lot of people, that it takes to do that. Someone's going to fly you to those places. The money does get spread.
But you think, okay, I see, I'm following where you're going. But if Bitcoin...
They don't have to do it for the right reasons for it to benefit people.
If we pay, though, in Bitcoin instead of dollars, those people would be happier because they see their stock and asset portfolio rising. Their bank accounts will continually be rising as adoption to Bitcoin rises. Because when adoption rises, the price rises.
I did something I once tried. I tried twice during the pandemic with Bitcoin.
Oh,
and once was like Riverside. Robinhood. And I heard terrible things where you don't really own the coins because they don't own and so I just tried. I said that wasn't quite safe because I was never asked about a wallet.
No, and
you know what I mean? So I'm like,
yeah,
it just feels like rug pulley.
There's potential for rug pulley, but go on.
Yeah, and then the other one, I tried Coinbase, and the problem there, I could not make a password secure enough. And it was just such a pain in the ass. I mean, how many people lose Bitcoin because they can't get back into it?
Oh, a lot. But then again, if people lose their Bitcoin, the scarcity rises and the price goes up because there's less Bitcoin in the market. But
those people are screwed.
Well,
and that Bitcoin is taken out of civilization essentially.
Yes, absolutely.
No one can use it.
No, but it makes the price rise if it's more scarce. If there's less coins out there, the price rises. And to your point, we can't have personal sovereignty without personal responsibility. That's a you problem. You can't say, I don't want to be overburdened by government control because you can't remember your password.
So you guys are in a very sympathetic community. So you guys view the guy who bought two pizzas with 10,000 Bitcoin in a higher regard than a person who lost $1.50 of Bitcoin because they couldn't remember the password.
No.
That's what I'm hearing.
I'm saying I don't want to be overregulated because you couldn't remember your password.
No, I get that. But I didn't hear an overwhelming amount of sympathy for the person.
Well, I'm here educating. I'm here to educate the community that says...
You might want to think, factor in how things come off. Right? It matters. It does matter how things come off. So I'm not saying you're wrong.
I know I'm not wrong.
I'm just saying.
So when it comes to the personal sovereignty, though, you you have to be a little bit more responsible with your passcodes. But to your point about exchanges, so how and what I teach people is, yes, you buy it on an exchange. I personally use River. I'm not getting plugged by them at all. So it's just what I use and it's what I know. It's a Bitcoin only exchange, and they have an audit system where you can personally see the audited Bitcoin that they have. It's very safe, it's very secure. And when you know it's an audited system, when you see your personal
People love to say it's audited and the algorithm's open source. Can you actually see that stuff?
You can. It's a ledger.
And can you understand it? Like if you were to hop in River right now, could you understand?
Yeah, I can see my purchase history essentially. But they don't know it's me, but I know it's me.
Okay.
And that's what I guess I love about Bitcoin is I know it's my private key. You don't know it's my private key. You don't know my transactions necessarily, but I know my transactions. And that's why the ledger is so cool. It is literally, so if we got into the technology behind Bitcoin, the blockchain, you can see every transaction to the history of
I
time.
was just going to say, because I see some of these accounts, Unusual Whales or something,
yes,
talking about this whale did this or that in Bitcoin. And I'm like, how the hell do they know?
It's on the blockchain. You see it. And like, for instance, you know where Satoshi has his Bitcoin and they've never moved. I mean, do I know how to see it? No, I haven't delved that far into the mempool, which is where you see the whole blocks. It's very cool to see. But again, I will learn that aspect when I want to learn that aspect. There's so much to learn.
You don't need to know it all to get in.
I don't need to know how the sausage is made.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get into the weeds like we talk about.
But it sounds like you do need to know enough to trust it.
I do trust it. Absolutely. And I trust it because it's code and it's not, people are not manipulating the process. People are not manipulating the code, the technology. And the nodes and the miners are protecting it. The nodes are protecting
This
it.
Satoshi guy, how much Bitcoin does he own?
1 million.
1 million of the 20 million?
Yeah, 21 million.
Okay, let's say...
I'm pretty sure it's 1 million.
Let's say a headline was out tomorrow.
Yeah.
Satoshi is active again and he sold all of it. What would happen? How would that be perceived? Would it be perceived that he knows something we don't and oh shit? Or would it be an opportunity?
I would view it as an opportunity. Absolutely. I've had this discussion with a lot of people because everybody has an opinion. I think it would make the price go down for a little bit until it recovers because Satoshi is such a fictitious person in people's minds that we don't think that, hey, he really exists. We love not having a central person that made this. So I think the price would go down, but it would recover, and it would almost be like, oh my gosh, let's grab up more Bitcoin at the price. Because when the price dips, you want to buy that dip. So once you actually get into Bitcoin, you see it dip, it's exciting. Because by the time you get it,
right,
you have to go through, again, it's the fiat brain.
It feels like everyone is already in on it, and you've missed all the 10Xs that's ever going to happen.
And you haven't. We are at 2% adoption. You have not missed the boat. Buy Bitcoin.
It's an important point.
The only thing you can do is invest. Just invest small, and then once it clicks for you, if it clicks for you, or continue to invest small, then when you see that dip, you're like super excited because you understand the potential because you've seen it go up to 105. So if it dips to 80, you're like, oh, I'm going to buy more because I know it's going to go up. And you have faith in a system because you know as adoption rate rises, as governments, as we get more El Salvador's out there, like Panama's going to become next. I'm predicting these countries will really take center stage with how innovative their communities are becoming because of Bitcoin.
When it does fall from 100 to 80 or any substantial amount, why would that be? Given the scarcity, given that it really always should only go up, why does it fall when it falls?
So the most recent example I'll give is the tariffs, right? So you have all these people and these investors and these companies, because we still are in a fiat system to pay with stuff.
Most of us.
Most of us. So you had the tariffs that scared a lot of businesses. So tariffs kind of impacted the Bitcoin price because you had a bunch of companies kind of, again, using it as a stock to deplete their portfolio to prop up their business. So that was an example where the price dropped. Move. Yeah, because, then as soon as it was like, wait, just kidding. Now it's up again. So the tariff prices really did affect it. However,
wow.
what I like to think, though, is, again, you talk about the military, we talk about inflation, we talk about the war games. I mean, that's a whole nother impact of the monetary system. We go to war to be, to mass produce weapons, to go to war, to make money, and everything's a profitable. It's a warmongering, life we live in. Bitcoin totally removes that.
How?
That's a good question. I don't necessarily know how to put that into words, but I know that on the global scale, with Britain right now mobilizing against Russia, the price didn't drop. And that was something that you would think would drop. You would make it drop. They're going to go to war. Stocks gotta... It's an interesting technology.
Absolutely.
And studying it is really cool, but I never studied stocks. So
we'll get you out of here on this one. What would you have people know? You've covered some ground, but if there was one really point to hammer, what would you have someone know about Bitcoin who's at that fence of whether I should explore more, get in?
Okay, so a couple things, and especially from Michigan, and I will tell why I'm focusing on Michigan. Michigan has a huge opportunity right now to not miss the innovation boat. We cannot stop innovation for lack of education, and so we have to be educated about Bitcoin. Michigan, I feel, always gets left behind when it comes to adoption. And I want to make Michigan the most adopted Bitcoin state because we have to fill a void. We are losing students. We are losing youth. We are losing manufacturing. We're losing the automotive industry, essentially, because there's just a void. Michigan does not have a good track record of retaining population.
We're struggling right now.
Yeah. We have to embrace Bitcoin technology to bring, I think, Michigan back from the brink of, disaster. But so that's what I would say. Embracing Bitcoin, just educating yourself. Always learn, always be educating, and buy a little bit. Buy a fractional amount, invest in a week. Again, like I said, there's River, there's Coinbase, there's Cash App. Visit mibtc.org. I'm with the Michigan Bitcoin Trade Council. We're here to kind of be that conduit between not knowing, and then kind of becoming your own expert. Because it's personal sovereignty. I want to make you a sovereign bank holder of your own wealth.
Absolutely. Amber Harris, one of my favorite people, one of the best people we got in Michigan. Eye-opener on Bitcoin. I'm gonna buy a little bit of Bitcoin. I'm gonna try that. Maybe the Coinbase, maybe River. We're gonna figure it out. But why miss the ride, right? I missed it going from 0 to 100,000. Maybe I'll catch 100,000 to 1 million. So
there we go.
Thank you for taking the time.